Good afternoon, Facebook friends and family. I have been hearing a lot of people in town and around who have been dealing with frustration and anger. They've been tired of this ongoing quarantine. They've been frustrated that they can't get out and do things. They've been sorrowful that they can't take their trips, see their families, and do the things that they had planned on doing this month, this season, this summer, this year. And it seems as though that even the people who are in the younger folks are really frustrated by now, but in our older members, it seems to be even harder. People are talking to me that they won't be able to go to their granddaughter's graduation because there isn't a graduation happening right now. They won't be able to go see their daughter or their son who is used to having a summer trip as part of their family's experience. They won't be able to do the kinds of things that they had planned to do. And while for those of us in our 40s and 30s and 20s, that is a really difficult thing. It seems as though for those of us in our 60s and 70s, seems to be even harder in that when you are in that age group, you're not sure how many years of going out and doing you may have, and so you just take it harder not knowing. But the truth is not many of us know exactly how long we have, and not many of us know exactly what's going to happen today or tomorrow or the next day. We can be assured that change is always coming and that change is part of life. But when these changes happen, something happens within us that reacts to that change, and we have to adjust to a new something, and we go through a very common process. We go through a process of grief. And I believe that while we were first in denial about all these kinds of things, some of the anger and bargaining things that we're seeing right now in our homes, we may be angry and frustrated at our spouses or our children or our significant friends and persons in our lives. We may have a very short fuse. I think a lot of that is grief at what we wish we could be doing and we have lost for this season. Grief at what we wanted to be doing instead of what we're doing right now. And we're having trouble coping with that. We're having trouble getting our hands around it, our hearts around it, and we're not focusing on what good is coming of this day. And we see that grief taken to an extreme in different sites around the country. I just recently saw that in Michigan, there were armed people with rifles in the Michigan legislature shouting and acting like they wanted to shoot the legislators for the votes that they're taking. I see that as an extreme of our grief, our frustration that we don't know what to do with. And so if we don't learn ways to cope with that grief, it can be taken to extreme, and it can end up hurting the people in our house, the people in society, and that's really scary. But doing things for the public good and doing things for the love of all sometimes requires sacrifice. And it requires us to be able to look at ourselves with love and with faith and with hope, and work on our stuff, as I've talked about before, including our grief. Now, for some of us, that seems an insurmountable feat, but it's not. And what makes it even harder right now is that you are not the only person grieving right now. Everyone is grieving right now, but different people are handling it different ways. Some people are mad and have rifles going on in the Michigan legislature. That's pretty extreme. Other people are not handling things. Maybe they had dysfunctional stuff at their house before and now it's really blown up. Maybe they had drug addiction problems, or they had domestic violence disputes, child abuse, and now it's at the extreme. Those are not new problems. Those are not new. What this time is showing us in our grief is the number of things that were already wrong that we needed to be working on. And so if you were pretty much doing healthy communication within your family, healthy communication with yourself, and you were okay and balanced individual, then it's rough, but it's not insurmountable right now, and you're just, you occasionally get frustrated, but it's not an overwhelming kind of grief. If you were already focused on gratitude as a spiritual practice, if you were already focused on things that were good for you and good for the people around you, then what this time has brought you is, yes, some challenges, but you already have tools in your skills and tools on your tool set in order to handle those things. But if you are going into grief and you don't have those tools and you're starting from scratch, or worse, you're starting from a deficit, you had a drug addiction, you were in a bad marriage, your kids are already having major problems, then this must feel hellacious for you right now. And we're here with the church to tell you there is another way. Loving yourself and loving others, there is another way. And this time is a time to tell you, hey, you're not alone, even if you think you are. And we would like to know how you're doing and what kind of resources that you need in order to make choices to change your situation. And as a society, this grief is great. And as a society, we see the problems. We knew a long time ago that meatpacking industry, that we only had a certain small number of places where meat was packed. Now they're talking about we may lose our meat supply because those packing industries, which before had problems on and on, every once in a while we'd get the E. coli bacteria, because the meat packing industry had bent so many different rules about how that should be done. And now we see that it's not just dangerous in the meat, it's dangerous in the working. And now the whole thing, we should have had meat packing industries that were kind of across the country that had better working conditions. And now we see that we need meat packing industries to change in order for us to be able to have good meat. We see that the climate that has changed in a way that allows these bugs to grow, which then threaten the rest of our lives. We see the grief of everything else. We see that the healthcare industry has not been set up in ways that are the best for all of us. And now in this moment of stress, here we have this other thing where we're going to have to make some serious and substantive changes to make sure that healthcare is not just protected, but is even embraced and empowered to be able to help us into the future, not just in this pandemic or need, but in the foreseeable future. We see how broken politics is and how divisive it's become, and we need to demand a better way where we can come together, where we can do the things that need to be done, and we can build our society for the better. The grief of the country is right in our face right now. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that, want everything to go back to normal right now. And that is what everybody in grief wants. But that's not how grief works. And if you think about in your own life what has happened, sometimes you've got post-traumatic stress, but sometimes you've got post-traumatic growth. So you can think about that and you can live in that moment forever and ever and ever, and time can be frozen in that horrible moment, and you can go back to it and go back to it and go back to it where that person has died, or you had that divorce, or that terrible thing happened to you. I've had a lot happen to me in my own life, and you can choose to live in that moment over and over again and be frozen in time for 10, 20, 50 years. Or you can choose to take the lessons of that moment, transform your life, and transform your understanding of what's happening in the world and with you, and empower yourself to be different from that. And now is a time where we're all in a collective pattern of grief that we have to challenge ourselves to really think about how we're responding to this. So I've got people in even just in this realm that are mad and that are having like a grief pout kind of thing. Oh, I'm not going to get to go see the children, or oh, I'm not going to get to have my graduation, or oh, those are things that are, yes, they're rattling. I get that, and it's sad. But you can take that and you can live in that grief from now until forever. Or you can take it and say, I can't do that, but I can do this. I've got other people that are in their 80s that are just saying, hey, God has pulled me through many things, and God is pulling me through right now, and God is blessing me right now, and I'm just grateful to be in this beautiful place on this beautiful day. We're all going through similar kinds of things, not the exact same kind of experience, but similar kinds of things. And we as individuals, as communities, and as a country need to think about how we are embracing this learning of this experience and how we are going to work through that. We can choose to live in this experience forever and just be really frustrated and either stay frozen here or even worse, go backwards to the way it was with all of its dysfunction, because even a bad familiarity is still familiarity. That's why a lot of people stay in bad marriages and bad situations. Even a bad familiarity is still familiarity. Or we can choose a different route and start to learn the lessons about ourselves and about others, about our country, about our communities and our world, and start to vision a different future. Start to say, nope, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to choose a different path for ourselves, for our families, for our region, for our state, for our country, for our world. We can fix this, but we have to take responsibility for our own feelings. We have to work through our own grief, and we have to dare to dream a better future. So I would say, if you are going to work through your grief, you need to start acknowledging that that's what's wrong. It's not these people over there that are doing these things. It's how you are choosing to respond to it. How you are feeling empowered or disempowered by this moment. How you are being creative or not creative with how you engage with this moment. Because if you give them all the power over your life and you don't take any of it for yourself, then that's really giving them too much power, whoever the them is. You have the authority to be hopeful, to be positive, to be loving, to be kind, to be creative, to be inspired, to be encouraging, to be praise-filled. And I encourage you today, I know this one's a little bit long, but to really think about this and to research a little bit about how grief works. Next Thursday, I'm going to get more information out to you on this next week. But next Thursday, this same day, next week, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to do a Facebook Live with a woman who knows a lot about grief and how to re-script it so that you can have a transformed experience in your own life with it. And I hope you'll tell your friends to check us out on Facebook Live or YouTube. We're going to try to stream to both of those because it's going to be a great conversation. Her name is Dale Spencer, and she's amazing. And I'm inviting you to that. But in between now and then, think about what your grief is like and what you want to address in it, and how you want to help your grief and the grief of others to be not just tolerated, but healed. There's a lot of healing going on. Let's do that together with incredible faith in God and in God through one another. God bless.